In Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra, there is a speech entitled On the Friend, in which Zarathustra explores the nature of friendship, what defines friendship, what makes a good friend, and how friends should relate to one another. In the speech, Zarathustra presents some pretty unconventional and thought-provoking, and at times even controversial ideas that subtly criticize how friendship is being viewed in modern Western culture. He rejects the notion that friendship is something trivial, a mere source of entertainment, comfort, or pleasure, or a way to escape boredom, loneliness, or sadness, and instead he sees it as a kind of a shared drive for mutual elevation, which helps both individuals to become the best possible versions of themselves. Friendship is a bond of love and respect, but also of competition, according to Zarathustra, echoing ancient Greek and Roman sensibilities that viewed agon, the Greek word for competition and conflict, originally used in athletics, as an essential part of friendship. At the end of the speech, Zarathustra also makes statements that may appear misogynistic at first glance, but I will attempt to show that they are not. Although Nietzsche does seem to harbor some bitterness towards women during this phase of his intellectual development, I will try to argue that in this particular speech he is not attacking the female gender per se, but rather criticizing societal norms that make it difficult for both women and men to form friendships. Instead, Zarathustra suggests that due to the shallow values propagated by modern culture, most people, including both men and women, do not experience friendship in their lives, that is, Freundschaft in German, but merely comradeship or camaraderie, or Kameradschaft in German. Friendship in the noble classical form that Zarathustra envisions is rare. This seems to be the central message of the speech. However, in the very act of preaching about it, Zarathustra seems to hope to inspire some of his disciples to revive this conception of friendship and use it as a means to cultivate the type of the overhuman, or Übermensch in German, which is to be a new kind of human being more worthy of affirmation than the current state of humanity. In this video, I'm going to analyze the speech section by section and will give my own interpretation of what Zarathustra is saying in it. Zarathustra begins his speech by describing himself as a hermit who spends most of his time alone, accompanied only by his thoughts. He is engaged in a constant dialogue with himself, but he knows that this state of constant introspection is in some sense dangerous. It can spiral too deep, it can distance him more and more from reality. This is why he realizes that he needs a friend, not just for company, but as someone who keeps him grounded and offers him a different perspective, as someone who lifts him from the depths of his own thinking. He says, quote, "One is always too many around me, thus thinks the hermit. Always 1 times 1. In the long run, that makes 2. I and me are always too eager in conversation. How could I stand it if there were no friend? For the hermit, the friend is always a third. The third is the cork that prevents the conversation of the two from sinking into the depths. Oh, there are too many depths for all hermits. That is why they long so for a friend and his height." End of quote. That height, the friend's perspective that is something that the hermit envies. He wishes he could see through the friend's eyes, to gain some clarity for himself, to be truly self-sufficient, as the ancient philosophers strived to be. But that's impossible. The friend is not him. He is a separate being, a different mind. And so, the love of friendship is often tangled with envy, because we admire in our friend what we lack in ourselves. And to hide this vulnerability, we sometimes lash out, turning the friend into an enemy. Quote, "Our faith in others betrays the areas in which we would like to have faith in ourselves. Our longing for a friend is our betrayer. And often one uses love merely to leap over envy. And often one attacks and makes an enemy in order to conceal that one is open to attack." End of quote. But for Zarathustra, this is not a flaw, it is a strength. A good friend is also a good enemy, as he says, in the sense that they serve as a worthy rival, a respectable, equal opponent with whom we can learn to disagree and compete, sharpening our strength and refining our judgment. The same applies in reverse. The friend, too, must see a good enemy in us for the relationship to be truly equal and mutually beneficial. While modern culture often portrays friendship primarily as a source of comfort and synergy, Zarathustra presents it rather as a source of productive conflict, a means of self-improvement built around a shared drive towards something greater. The best enemy is one who is our equal, ensuring that our struggle with them leads to growth and refinement for both sides. Like any other relationship, friendship requires agon, which is the Greek word for conflict, in order to remain alive and dynamic. Without this element of productive struggle, friendship would become stagnant and would lead to a lack of development, which is a state that to Zarathustra signifies degeneration. That is why he proclaims, quote, "At least be my enemy. Thus speaks true respect that does not dare to ask for friendship. If one wants a friend, then one must also want to wage war for him. And in order to wage war, one must be able to be an enemy. One should honor the enemy even in one's friend. Can you step up to your friend without stepping over to him? In one's friend, one should have one's best enemy. You should be closest to him in heart when you resist him." End of quote. In order for us to be a good enemy to our friend, they must see us in a good light. We must appear respectable and admirable so that the friendship remains meaningful. If our friend loses respect for us, they may abandon the friendship as its foundation would be weakened. Friendship in this Nietzschean sense is characterized by veneration, a deep respect for what is high or noble in the other, but also by certain shyness or restraint. While modern culture, again, often idealizes friendship as a kind of a bond of absolute openness and unfiltered honesty, where friends fully reveal everything about themselves, including their virtues and flaws, to the other, Zarathustra challenges this idea. He suggests that such complete exposure might actually weaken the friendship. If friends see each other in their fully human, all too human, as Nietzsche would say, imperfection, they may lose the respect and veneration that made their friendship valuable in the first place. Instead, Zarathustra seems to argue that we should strive to present our best qualities to our friend and not reveal too much of the less respectable aspects of our nature, but not out of deception, but out of genuine care for the friendship itself. If we were to expose ourselves completely, naked, as Zarathustra puts it, our friend might lose respect for us, as we would no longer resemble the inspiring rival they once admired. But because we care about our friend, we also want to remain a strong rival for them, just as they wish to be a strong rival for us. Thus, maintaining a certain level of mystery, dignity, and restraint is not an act of dishonesty, but rather a sign of genuine love and respect, a way of protecting the friendship and allowing it to thrive. This is why Zarathustra proclaims, quote, "You want to wear no garb before your friend? Is it supposed to be to your friend's honor that you give yourself to him as you are? But for that he curses you to the devil. Whoever makes no secret of himself outrages others. So much reason do you have to fear nakedness. Indeed, if you were gods, then you could be ashamed of your clothing. For your friend you cannot groom yourself beautifully enough, for you should be his arrow and longing for the overman." End of quote. However, when we see our friend at their most vulnerable, human and real, such as when they are sleeping, as Zarathustra says in the next section, we may also see a reflection of ourselves, an imperfect mirror of our own human nature with all its frailties and limitations. Yet, as Zarathustra constantly reminds us, the human is something that must be overcome. Our current state is not fixed, not permanent, not set in stone. It can be challenged, changed, and transcended. It can be transformed into something higher, something more worthy of affirmation. Which is again why Zarathustra says, quote, "Have you ever seen your friend sleeping so that you discover how he really looks? What after all is the face of your friend? It is your own face, in a rough and imperfect mirror. Have you ever seen your friend sleeping? Weren't you startled that your friend looks as he does? Oh, my friend, human being is something that must be overcome. End of quote. Friends must not want to know everything about one another, Zarathustra seems to say, again, contrary to modern ideas about friendship. They should only try to guess what's going on in the other's mind and how they really live their life when we are not with them, so that the sense of mystery, respect, and distance that Zarathustra talks about is preserved. He goes on to say, quote, "The friend should be a master of guessing and keeping silent. You must not want to see everything. Your dream should reveal to you what your friend does while waking." End of quote. Similarly, we should also guess when our friend is suffering and whether they truly want our compassion. Not everyone who suffers wants to be pitied. Some, on the contrary, may value encouragement and affirmation more. But if we decide to offer compassion to our friend nevertheless, we must do so carefully because, as Nietzsche frequently warns us in his works, compassion is dangerous. It can humiliate the other by placing them in a position of the weak and needy, while elevating us to the more powerful position of the one who pities. We should therefore think carefully before offering compassion to our friend, and even when we do, it should be a so-called hard compassion, not overly sentimental as Zarathustra implies in the next section. It should help our friend face reality as it is, rather than sugarcoating the truth just for the sake of comfort. Such compassion will not simply console, it will give strength to go on. This is yet another way in which Zarathustra challenges modern ideas about friendship, where compassion is often seen as one of its most essential qualities. This sentiment likely originates from Christianity, and since Nietzsche was a fierce critic of Christian morality, he warns us, through the character of Zarathustra, to be cautious with compassion, as it is not the harmless, absolute good that Christianity makes it out to be. This is why Zarathustra says, quote, "Let your compassion be a guessing, so that you might first know whether your friend wants compassion. Perhaps what he loves in you is your unbroken eye and look of eternity. Let compassion for your friend conceal itself beneath a hard shell, so that in biting on it you lose a tooth. That way it will have its delicacy and sweetness." End of quote. As Nietzsche writes in other works, the kind of noble friendship that he envisions is not based around compassion or literally suffering together, as is implied in the German word Mitleid, the word for compassion. It is not about sharing pain or seeking mutual relief from loneliness, boredom, or sadness, but instead it is about sharing joy, or Mitfreude in German. It is about celebrating each other's strength, growth, and achievements. As Nietzsche writes in Human All Too Human and The Gay Science, respectively, quote, "Friends, welcome everything new and developing in each other, take pleasure in the honors and successes of their counterpart, and want to make each other braver, more persevering, simpler, and more joyful." End of quote. But if we are to be this source of strength, joy, and support to our friend, we must first be that for ourselves. We cannot use friendship to distract ourselves from our own weaknesses. We cannot save others while remaining lost ourselves. A friendship where one is a slave, always dependent, always sacrificing, is not a true friendship. And neither is one where one is a tyrant, controlling, demanding, seeking to dominate. Friendship must be an equal force, where both are free. Returning to Zarathustra, Nietzsche writes, quote, "Are you pure air and solitude and bread and medicine to your friend? Many cannot loosen their own chains, and yet they are a redeemer for the friend. Are you a slave? Then you cannot be a friend. Are you a tyrant? Then you cannot have friends." End of quote. The final passage of Zarathustra's speech is perhaps the most controversial, as it may initially appear outright misogynistic. However, a closer reading reveals a more nuanced perspective, as I am going to try to show. In the last section of the speech, Zarathustra says, quote, All too long a slave and a tyrant have been concealed in woman. That is why woman is not yet capable of friendship. She knows only love. In the love of a woman are injustice and blindness toward everything that she does not love. And even in the knowing love of a woman, there is everywhere still assault and lightning and night next to light. Woman is not yet capable of friendship. Women are still cats and birds, or at best, cows. End of quote. If we sort of ignore the last remark and focus on the more substantial parts of this passage, we can see that Zarathustra is saying that women are not yet capable of friendship, not that they will never be capable of it, as if it were somehow ingrained in their gender. Rather, he seems to suggest that something has been hindering women from properly learning how to form friendships, something that keeps them as cats and birds and prevents them from developing friendships. However, once this obstacle is removed, they could become capable of it, is what he seems to be saying. I believe he's referring here to traditional gender roles imposed by society, not to the female gender itself. He seems to be saying that throughout history, women have been conditioned into two opposing roles, the slave and the tyrant. As a slave, a woman has traditionally been expected to be submissive, dependent, and self-sacrificing, particularly in relationships and societal roles. As a tyrant, on the other hand, the woman has been placed in a position of emotional dominance, particularly in the realm of love, where she may wield power through affection, manipulation, or control over her partner. These roles are not necessarily inherent, but are socially constructed, shaped by the historical expectations imposed on women. Because women have historically been shaped by these relationships of dominance and submission, Zarathustra seems to claim that they have not yet developed the ability to engage in the kind of equal, noble friendship that he envisions. Instead of friendships built on rivalry, respect, and mutual elevation, women, as Nietzsche saw them in his time, were more accustomed to relationships defined by love, which is, as he described earlier, is often possessive, exclusive, and irrational. But this does not mean that women can never be capable of friendship. Nietzsche's use of the not yet suggests that this is a historical condition, not a biological inevitability. If women were freed from these roles, they could also develop the kind of friendship that Zarathustra values. However, Zarathustra does not stop at criticizing women, he immediately turns his critique toward men as well. He says, quote, "Woman is not yet capable of friendship, but tell me, you men, who then among you is capable of friendship? Oh, how repulsive is your poverty, you men, and the stinginess of your souls! As much as you give your friend, I will give even to my enemy, and would not be poorer for it. There is comradeship, may there be friendship. Thus spoke Zarathustra." End of quote. Even men, therefore, very often fail to live up to the ideal of friendship, according to Zarathustra, which suggests that this last part of the speech is not an attack on women, but a critique of humanity as a whole. Friendship, in the noble sense that Zarathustra envisions, is rare and requires a level of strength, generosity, and independence that few actually possess. Men are often stingy, calculating, and transactional in their friendships. But friendship should not be about self-interest or keeping score. It should be about a shared striving towards something greater. Zarathustra suggests that friendship should be so great that it surpasses even the treatment of enemies, a level of strength and openness that most people lack. Finally, he makes a sharp distinction between comradeship, or Kameradschaft in German, and friendship, that is Freundschaft in German. Judging from what we've heard from him so far, we can conclude that by comradeship he seems to mean a kind of an everyday bond based on mutual interests, shared struggles, or common enemies. But by friendship he seems to mean a kind of a rare bond that challenges and refines both individuals. The main purpose of friendship, therefore, according to what Zarathustra seems to be saying in this speech, is to uplift and improve both individuals involved through a combination of respect, veneration, and healthy conflict. Most people, however, as Zarathustra suggests, only experience comradeship in their lives, not friendship in this sense. But it seems to be Zarathustra's hope that if his disciples, the free spirits as he calls them, learn about this noble conception of friendship, they might incorporate it in their lives, and in this way make humanity a little more elevated, noble, and beautiful. Or in Nietzsche's words, it is Zarathustra's hope that this conception of friendship will help bring humanity closer to the type of the overhuman.